Alright, welcome to the second episode of my YouTube video series where I go through every Pokemon in the doubles metagame in PokeMMO, and I'm basically explaining why those Pokemon are good, what challenges do they face, and how should you build one, or how to build against it. So yeah, this time I'm talking about Hitmontop, which is it's very surprising Pokemon to be so highly used in doubles metagame, especially for people who are not so familiar with doubles. For singles players, they might look at it and they might think that why are people using this? But when they get more used to doubles, they kind of understand why Hitmontop is actually such an amazing Pokemon and why it has so many traits that are just so useful in doubles kinds of formats in general. So yeah, it had 28.03 usage in December 2021, which is very respectable. It's kind of crazy to think that over every fourth team had a Hitmontop. So yeah, it's pretty much used in so many teams. So first of all, what makes Hitmontop so good? Well, I would argue it is basically the Swiss Army knife of just any doubles format in general. So it's kind of like a Swiss Army knife. It supports the team in lots of ways. It has so many tools to help its teammates. So many support options that I will later will address more thoroughly. But yeah, it's also a fighting type, which is it's actually a very good typing in a format that is so aggressively dominated by Tyranitar. So having a counter to Tyranitar is very useful. It has Intimidate, which is a great ability in doubles. With the addition of Gen 8 abilities, Intimidate doesn't affect so many Pokemon that it used to, but it's still a great way to keep a lot of offensive physical sweepers in check. For example, especially Sand Duo like Tyranitar Excadrill are very much annoyed by Hitmontop's Intimidate. And then what I would argue makes Hitmontop so specifically great is the combination of Fake Out and Feint. So basically, Fake Out forces your opponent, one of your opponent's Pokemon, to do nothing for one turn, as long as it doesn't have inner focus, basically. So most of the time, the answer to that for opponent is to just protect the Pokemon that is going to be faked out. But because Hitmontop also has Feint, this means you can use the protect turn to actually feint the opponent and lift their protect and target it instead. So it forces a very much like awkward mind games for the opponent, where they have to think, oh, are they going to fake out me or are they going to feint? So a lot of the time the opponent just straight up has to switch out because they're not sure which one is going to come. So they have to, if they have like a very powerful Pokemon in their team, they have to kind of save it by switching it out, and just simply protecting will not be good enough. So that makes Hitmontop so great with that combo. And then, well, it has also lots of other support options like Ally Switch, White Guard, and a Helping Hand, which are all very powerful moves in doubles. So Hitmontop has like support options like pretty much no else in the doubles format. Well, then the question. Let me just move my face a little bit. What challenges Hitmontop faces? Well, first of all, it has kind of a subpar stats. So its base stats total is actually very low. It's only 455. So if you compare that to the other phases of doubles metagame, such as Tyranitar, Metagross, and Salamence, which are base 600, it's kind of very bad in comparison. So its stats are actually like one of its most limiting things compared to like the most high tier doubles Pokemon. And then it's kind of one-dimensional offensively. It usually only carries close combat, so it's very predictable as a means of offense when it's on the field. And even though Hitmontop is an Intimidate user, it's also kind of prone to intimidate itself. So if opponent comes in with a Salamence or Gyarados, that is going to take the power of Hitmontop even further. Then about nature and EVs. Hitmontop has a lot of potential natures, so I would argue that almost every minus special attack nature is viable. Um, I said almost because I haven't seen many jolly Hitmontops, but even that's not like, if you want a very fast fake out user, then even that's technically in play in my opinion. But yeah, the most common currently is adamant, so it kind of emphasizes the close combat damage from Hitmontop, because Hitmontop is often used to kind of nuke like opposing Porygon 2 or Tyranitar, so it kind of wants to make sure that when it shoots off a close combat that it's actually going to get the kill. But then also careful is very much used. It's, for example, it can be seen as like a soft check to rain teams with wide guard, so it can like come in at least to some water attacks from opponent, and then it can like buy the positioning by wide guarding. So if you're concerned about improving your rain matchup, then a careful one with wide guard is a very useful option. And then you can also use Impish, which is not a bad nature at all, especially if you want to have a very hard counter to Ranitar, for example. So I would list those three as like all viable natures to have. And well, then about how to EV train a Hitmontop. Well, I would only have one ground rule for Hitmontop, and because Hitmontop has a very low base HP, you should always 252 HP your Hitmontop. So basically, when you add EVs are always going to add the same amount of stats. So it's usually the most beneficial to put EVs on something that's useful but a low stat. So Hitmontop's low base HP is the reason why I would argue you should always 252 HP your Hitmontop. But then how you want to use your last 256 EVs, it can be basically tailored to your needs. Generally, if you use Adamant, it makes the most sense to put attack EVs. If you use Careful, put some special defense EVs, and if you use Impish, some physical defense EVs, because of it's those EVs are actually going to boost the most stats when it's used to the stats that is already getting boosted. But you can tailor them in many ways. Like if you feel like you need a little bit more special defense and attack, then you can spread those EVs between them. So I'm not gonna suggest any simple EV spread for Hitmontop, other than just always go for max HP. And like I said, then some speed can be useful to be the fastest fake out on the field. So if you want to make sure, for example, that you're faster than opposing Hitmontop to fake out, you can put some speed EVs. You can even put some speed EVs to make sure you're faster than opposing Blastoise, which means that you get the faster fake out. So you can also do like small speed creeps with Hitmontop, which is definitely not out of the question at all. Then about moves. Well, I would argue that the three must moves Hitmontop should have are Close Combat, Fake Out, and Feint. I already kind of explained why I think Fake Out Feint combination is so strong. Close Combat is basically the strongest offensive option Hitmontop has. So it's just the best fighting top attack, and just try to get the opposing targets away from the field if you decided to do so. Yeah, but then the last move, that can be a lot of things. So wide guard is can be like a soft check to spread attacks. Then you have ally switch, which is basically a meme as known to be so annoying, but it's a powerful move. Like you can catch your opponent off guard with it. Then you can also use helping hand to basically boost the output of your teammates' damage, and then you can also use the fourth move for offensive options like Sucker Punch, Mach Punch. Even Rock Slide can be reasonable. For example, if you don't have many Pokemons for Chandelure, then it's not totally out of the questions. But usually Hitmontop's role is more supportive, so it's not commonly used. Common to have two offensive attacks, but it's fine. Like you can do that way if you want to. Yeah. And then about items. The most common item is Fighting Gem, to basically give Hitmontop like a one-time nuke with close combat. So like if you recognize that you need a target down with close combat, you can do a lot of damage with it, like actually a lot of damage. And yeah, because close combat drops your defense and special defense. It has kind of a KO or get KO'd kind of a syndrome. So basically, if you're gonna shoot a close combat, you kind of hope that you will kill with it, or you're gonna face like a lot of retaliation from your opponent. You can also use Citrus Berry to kind of have longevity for the Hitmontop to switch in, to have more times it can switch in against its opponent. And then some people also use eject button to basically switch it in, get intimidate off, and then immediately getting attacked and switching to another monster. It's basically used as a pivot when you don't want to risk anything else. So you're just like using like Hitmontop basically as a punching bag to take attack and then switch into a Pokemon that you actually want on the field. Then about team synergy, well, kind of a boring answer again, but I would argue there is literally not a single team or a single team composition in PokeMMO Doubles where Hitmontop is not a good choice to have. Like I would argue in literally every team you can put a Hitmontop and it will do something. Especially in this metagame where Tyranitar is so strong. So like if your team just needs a 6 mana and you have no idea what to add, just put a Hitmontop and it will do always something. So kind of a boring answer. If I would go more in detail, I would say, well, yeah, I mean, just have some switch-ins to flying and psychic attacks, but usually you will have that anyway. So it's not exactly like that Hitmontop needs like a specific team around it. Like I don't think I've ever in my like ever thought about like how should I support Hitmontop. Like it's just not a thought you have when you build a doubles team. Like Hitmontop is the tool you're using to support, not the other way around. But yeah, then some counterplay. Like if your team just happens to not enjoy Hitmontop, then you could consider following Pokemon like Salamence, Gyarados, Chandelure, Reuniclus, Crobat, and so forth. Like it's not hard to beat Hitmontop, to be perfectly honest, but it's still, these are still the mons that like pretty much care about Hitmontop the least. Maybe with the exception of Gyarados, which doesn't enjoy getting intimidated, but all the other mons are basically fine with Hitmontop. But yeah, that's about it. So that's basically my lecture about Hitmontop. I hope it was useful, and yeah, I will see you in the next one.